Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, June 6, 2023 Select Board meeting. We have the board minus Mark present. We have the town manager, the town clerk, members of the public and town. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda is we have a brand new town report, and I would like to take time right now and read the dedication. The town report is dedicated to Neil Hokie Hokinson. The Berwick Select Board is honored to dedicate this year's town report in memory of Neil Hokie Hokinson. For Berwick's residents, the transfer station is a community hub and an important stop on the errand list. Hokie was the long-time prominent smiling face of the Berwick transfer station and always lent a helpful hand to the Berwick community. Hokie wore many hats in his lifetime, having spent 20 years serving in the United States Air Force, 23 years working for the Navy Yard, and in the last 17 years serving the town of Berwick. He was an active member of the Car Club and greatly enjoyed the time he spent with his fellow members, sharing their love of classic vehicles. He was a regular at Mayo's, mainly local Yolks restaurant, for years, and everyone knew him. Hokie was a kind and caring man and loved his family and his community. Hokie will be deeply missed by all who knew him and loved him. Yes, Hokie was a very long-standing fixture of the town. Everybody seemed to know him. Everybody ran into him on a regular basis, and always in a great mood. Always great to see him come down and help us out. So at this time, I'd like to have town manager here present the town report to members of Hokie's family.
Is the town report?
Yeah, just it's an honor to dedicate this year's town report to him. Great man, a great public service.
Hey, tell him to go back.
James, go back.
No, let's get photos.
No, let's take a photo.
Oh, jeez.
You're the pose.
Okay.
You're good.
Terrific.
I gotta do that.
We greatly appreciate you guys coming down and accepting the report on Hokie's behalf. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to say a little bit about Hokie. We had a lot of fun over the years, joking back and forth. My first year as the chairman on the board here he was down here for some presentation or something, and when it was his turn, I said, "Neil, it's your turn." And no response.
Nope.
Neil.
Nope.
And I went, Hokie. Oh, that's me. So, I didn't know his name was Neil for the longest time. So, he was always a joy to be around. So,
Yes, and he definitely will be missed. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. First, we have the approval of the meeting minutes from our May 23rd, 2023 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second them.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. First, public comment. Does anybody wish to make a public comment? I will close the public comment. We have a public hearing for the adult use marijuana store and cultivation facility, 468 Portland Street, Herbal Pathways.
So we received no complaints and there's no active violations. This time I recommend waiving the public hearing and approving the application. This is the second time renewing, so they've been in front of us 3 times and not had one violation or complaint on this property.
Does anybody wish to speak on this particular matter? All right.
I will make a motion to approve the renewal for the adult use marijuana store and cultivation facility at 468 Portland Street, Herbal Pathways,
And waive the public hearing.
and waive the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Thanks, Billy.
All right. We have no reports of committees. Department report. Josh Jones, Director of the Recreation Department.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hey, Josh. Thank you, sir.
I'm going to give you all a projected expenditure report for the remaining projects that we have scheduled for this summer. Certain reference if you get any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I got two.
Anybody in the audience wants one? Everything is moving along pretty well right now. We had our early spring hiccups. I guess the meeting that I not purposely missed the last time, I apologize for that, missing that meeting. James kind of gave you a little rundown of the basketball goals. That issue will be resolved. We're hoping this week, next week. We got Precision involved to do that relocation. He's going to honor the price that he quoted last year for it. So we did really well there to get those relocated. It's about 20 feet. All four of them need to go about northeast, so we don't have to pave into the baseball field, which might not be well for the baseball players.
I think baseball would appreciate that.
Real warning track.
Yeah. Could use that. It'd be easier to weed eat if I had a warning track. I tried to get an update on the playground this week. Mark, our rep, was on the road. That was the words they used. I haven't heard back from him. I feel like we're over halfway waiting for the equipment, so we should be within a couple of weeks of receiving all the playground equipment. I talked with Jimmy Guy to do the dirt work to clear the space, the footprint that it's going to go in. Doesn't seem like it's very difficult work. We have some irrigation that we'll have to relocate, some valve boxes that are right there. Very simple work as long as all the stuff in the ground is not brittle and works with the removal and the replacement or the new location that we figure out where they need to go. The power pole, that line that's going over, that will be hanging over the playground will need to be removed. We don't want any jungle gymming on a live line.
No trapeze out of it?
No, so I don't know how
Slack
tall.
lines?
Yeah, we're not quite certain the distance from the top of the highest structure to that line, but we're going to get rid of it anyway. We're going to go underground with all of our electricity. And then they have to assemble a crew, so even when we get the equipment, we're still at the mercy of them providing a crew to put everything in the ground. But we'll have everything done on our end, waiting for them. It is an active park, and so timing that dirt work with the safety of our kids for summer camp and all the, everybody else that's going to be at the park, that's on our mind. We don't want that hole unoccupied for as long as we can, but we do understand people have working schedules, and we'll get it done when we can, but as soon as we can to get that crew up here mobilized. Basketball courts will get redone, and then we're going to try to time that with the tennis court. So we have the retaining wall on the tennis court should be started to be built at the end of this month, and then when they're done, that's about a 2-week project. When they're done, a fence company is going to come put the posts in for the tennis fence, and then we will be able to pave both courts at that time. And this Precision is also going to do the tennis net posts. So we'll get that done before paving as well. So we should be able to mobilize and pave in one trip, but we do have to get the retaining wall, the tennis posts in. We're not going to fence the basketball court at this time. We are going to stripe the tennis court at this time. We do have an option to not stripe the basketball court, just looking for little places where we can trim some fat off the expenditures. That was one thing that we mentioned because we can play pickup ball. It's a little easier to play pickup basketball without lines than it is to play tennis without lines.
A little bit.
A little bit.
I would also agree that it is much easier to play basketball without one.
Yeah, so that's just one area where we look to trim some fat off of the expenditures. We realize we have got quite a bit left to do, but we're confident, not 100% that it'll get done when we want it, but we're at the mercy of other people's schedules. So we've got to get some things done before we can get everybody here at once. But I'm coordinating with everybody, feel good about it. We closed summer camp registrations. We hit a number 139, which is more than last year by 20-something.
Nice.
Exactly 20.
Yeah, by over 20. 18 staff plus Shannon and I. 12 field trips all over the place, which I'm excited to go to. I haven't been to anything. So
I was going to say, how many of those 12 have you been to?
I've been to 0, so I'm the biggest kid on the trip.
I'm sure he flew in from Colorado to go to Funtown.
I did. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll go on all those. We're going to be at the park. We've got our backup plans. We have our training dates for staff. We have parents' night for meeting the staff. We'll do that on the 20th and the 21st. Shake hands, meet parents, give handbooks out, expectations for parents and kids and behaviors and all that. And let's see, playground summer camp, dirt work, pretty much covered everything. Just wanted to give you guys an update on what's happening. We should have everything done by the end of summer.
Terrific. I totally agree that if you're coming up, short on funds, the basketball lines can wait a year if we need to.
Sure.
I mean, we can always do that after,
Right.
But if we need the money, we can't unline it. We can't. So
Right.
I have no problem with that if that's the direction you decide to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
So you've been here a few months. How do you like it?
I love it. Been to the beach. This is the closest I've ever lived to the beach. So, been there a few times. A little cold.
Yeah. You don't.
My
go
kids don't care. They're in there with blue lips and teeth chattering. It's great, Dad. But yeah, we've got lots of exploring to do. Evan just broke his foot, so that kind of put us down a little bit. But
Well, sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that everything else is going in the right direction.
Yeah, it is.
Positive direction.
I feel like we got a little momentum right now. We'll just keep it going.
Please let us know how summer camp goes, just to keep us up to date. You don't need to come to a full meeting and do a full presentation, but
Okay.
just, if there's problems, let us know so they can be handled.
Yep, I'm probably going to be there every morning at 7. I plan on being out the field every day. I do have 2 trips planned. One is fun, one is not. So we'll get through those in July, and then I'm going to be there 95% of every day. So I plan on being a face for all the families to see every day.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
All right. We don't have any appointments, presentations, unfinished business, amendment to the traffic ordinance.
I'll start by saying, you guys can escape if you want.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh no, you have to stay the
Not my
whole time.
thing.
Ours either.
Somebody's got to do it, though.
So went back to Chief Town for a few amendments to the parking ordinance. It escalates it a little quicker to a boot and then towing. I did coincidentally received a phone call from somebody who said they would file a complaint just in general about having public property be reserved. So that's something I did receive, and I said they requested that I would forward that along for today. I am looking for approval of this tonight, but I'm thinking, based off that, maybe with the condition that I'll run this through our legal, get their legal opinion.
What
And
was the complaint specific? Do they work in the area, live in the area? Or are they just mad
Said
at the
they're-
idea of it?
said that they're actually they're a customer of Subway, and one of the tenants came out and was upset at him for parking in their spot. So I think based off of that experience, which wasn't a very positive experience, and that's why I heard about it. I just think he thinks it's wrong to reserve spaces on public property. That's the gist of it.
Well, I mean, we have a public parking lot over here that has employee parking in certain places, and there's handicap parking, which is reserved parking for a specific
very
group of
common.
people. I don't think that there's any legal basis for which we cannot reserve parking for people who live in the
Who lives
specific
on
area.
that street.
I mean, when I lived in Portland, you had to get a parking permit to park on the street. On the street. If
And this is no different. This is
Yeah,
parking
this
on
is-
a street.
yeah, the only difference is that who can get a parking permit is limited to the people who live in that area
Right,
and
at least.
and only have those areas to park. Otherwise, because the other parking in the area is time limited.
Mhm.
So I don't think there's any. I doubt there would be any illegal basis to challenge it. They can be annoyed, but it is what it is. So I don't think that that's particularly necessary. But okay, anybody on the board?
The spaces that we're talking about on the back street, the back alley there, those spaces have historically been reserved for the tenants there for more than 50 years that I know of. So there's a historical precedent set there already. But I believe the municipality can restrict the parking as it sees fit. You have parking for deliveries, we have parking for emergency vehicles, you designate spots for loading and unloading, so I don't see a problem with it.
I mean, even for special events, you can stop all parking. It's so. I don't see any specific legal challenge that would harm this particular ordinance.
Wouldn't hurt to run it past legal, but it's better be safe than sorry, but I'm willing to override legal if they say no. That's my feeling on it. As I said, for more than 50 years, I've known that has been reserved, reserved for the tenants in that area. So I don't have a problem with it. But I'll make a motion that we accept the changes to the parking ordinance as presented.
A second, though.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. So, town manager's report.
I have an update on for the speed tables. Dobson's fairly easy. Where we put the speed bumps last year, that's where the speed tables can go. Sweeter's a little more difficult, because where the neighbor doesn't want their speed bump right after their property, that'd be a logical place to put it. So it really squeezes putting two on Sweeter Street to have it make sense,
Yeah.
or without it being too close to an intersection, which makes it difficult for plows.
Yeah.
If you have a speed bump here to turn the plow. So I don't know if we want to start with one in one location and I guess allow the opportunity to engage the resident that doesn't want it in their property and just say, is this what you expected? And try to revisit a second speed bump at that time? Or do we want to squeeze two in?
The Sweetster Street, the area you're talking about is less than a quarter of a mile. It's probably closer to an eighth of a mile, in distance. And we also have another street that comes off to the side there, North Street.
Mhm.
Yeah. So another intersection there. I think you could get away with one speed bump centrally located in that area, and be more than sufficient. I can't see people, going over a speed table and then accelerating, to 40 or 50 and then coming to the stop sign. I just don't see people doing that. So
I can, but I would still agree that one is better than none, obviously, and two, that would be if they can't be spread out properly, like if there's going to be like one after another, or if they're going to be too close to the intersection, too close to the stop sign to make it make sense, then one centrally located is better than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing is just take it back to the residents on the street and say, hey, look, we looked at it the best way, and this is what we can do. So at least they
Unless
know
you
that
can
they're
change
hard on
the,
it,
unless
too.
you can change the, unless you can change your neighbor's mind,
Yeah.
But also, we're also talking about increased signage as well.
Yes.
So, child at play, slow.
Yeah,
sign,
and those signs are in the works of being ordered and
Yeah, so
placed.
hopefully the whole package
Yeah.
encompassing it will help.
And those, maybe Scott's going to try to get them in this month, but if not, by July.
Is that going to come under this current budget or the next budget?
It's a reserve fund, so either
Okay. Anything else?
same pot. I do have more. One I have, we received word on a foreclosed property that someone's looking to pay the back taxes. So I'm looking for a motion to deed 68 Mayflower Lane back to the property owner, pending payment of back taxes and fees.
Do we have an exact amount on that?
$8,500, including attorney's fees.
$8,500.
Okay. Does that include it? The attorney fees?
Attorney's fees.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that?
He's going to put the money, return it back to them just so they can sell it and break even with the town. Correct?
They're paying us for the back taxes and attorney's fees, and then it's theirs.
we no longer foreclose on it.
We have a lien on the deed because of the taxes.
Yeah.
We don't.
And we're going to release the deed after they pay.
Yeah.
And then they can do whatever they want with it.
Yep.
Sell it, fix it,
Yep.
knock it down.
Okay.
Okay, I would make a motion that we could release deed, what is it, 826?
68 Mayflower Lane.
68 Mayflower Lane to the new owners once all fees.
Actually, the same property owner.
Same property owner?
Yeah.
All right. To the original property owner once all back taxes and fees have been paid.
Second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Also, just a note when we're talking about foreclosures, I think the Supreme Court came down with a court case where it's relevant to Maine, where we can no longer keep the proceeds of
Any profits.
any profits.
Yeah.
It has to go back to the property owner. So,
Which I also have no problem with. It makes perfect
Makes
sense
sense.
anyway. Yeah.
the Route 4 safety study is in a draft concept. So if anyone is watching this and wants to review it, I can send you a copy. I emailed the board. This includes turn lanes and raised center median islands. One of the issues that caused fatalities in the past were people recklessly passing on Route 4. The raised islands will prevent that because it'll be curbed, possibly some trees and lighting in the middle, and then turn lanes, so right turn lanes and left turn lanes in designated areas by Blackberry Hill Road and Kind Farms Pond Road. So again, that's in draft form. We've reached out to some of the businesses in the area to mix reviews depending on the segment, so we're still working on massaging that and make it work.
Did Mark have mixed reviews?
If you could send me a copy of that, I'd really like to look at it.
Should be in your
It's in the
inbox.
email.
I sent it like
It's right
an
behind
hour
me,
or hour and a half ago. Last thing I have is with the drainage project from the edge to Salmon Falls River is scheduled for starting sometime late summer into the fall, depending on what the lead times are. School Street and Sawmill Hill most likely will both need to be closed for 4 days, and this will be Tuesday through Friday to try to minimize disruption to Town Hall as much as possible. So there will be ample notice and signage posted ahead of time, and just kicking thoughts back and forth between engineers. That'll be the best way to help them get across. They're starting at the edge is our infrastructure, going all the way across that School Street and Sawmill Hill intersection, and getting across to the second half of the Gateway Gas property where the cars are parked. So it's a pretty big expanse. But yeah, that will effectively eliminate flooding on Wilson Street. I don't think we'll ever see, maybe I won't say ever see, but
I'm gonna say, don't say that.
I know we'll get a monsoon, but it significantly increases our capacity well into the future. And that completes my report.
So we won't see that flooded Main Street ever again.
Wilson Street, because they're putting in they're upsizing the culvert, and we went from a 48-inch pipe that at one point went all the way down. So you had the 48-inch pipe that went all the way down to a very small pipe before it got to the river. So that would just back up all the way to Wilson Street.
Yeah.
Now it's a 60-inch pipe all the way coming down.
Any questions for the town manager? All right. We have no select board communications. Approval of accounts payable. We have a payroll warrant number 80 from June 1st, 2023 in the amount of $76,758.32. We have a payroll warrant number 81 from June 8th, 2023 in the amount of $78,884.37. And an accounts payable warrant number 82 from June 6th, 2023 in the amount of $1,158,008.61. I made the motion that we pay our bills.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Taken care of.
Just say that last one's a doozy.
New business, MRI payroll services. You've been waiting long enough.
Kudos for efficient meeting so far. We'll try to keep it that way. My name is Christian Pearsall. This is Carrie Sawyer. We're both from Municipal Resources. We've been providing services on and off for the town of Berwick, I think since 2002, according to our files, although it may have been earlier than that. I'm not sure. Sometimes the files pre-2000 get a little squirrely, but a long time. So we are a services company, first and foremost. We are in some regards starting a new line of business. This is sort of a new line of business, except we've been doing payroll and finance services for pretty much as long as MRI exists. What we found in the past couple of years, actually, frankly, since we hired Carrie, 3 years ago, payroll has become a type of service that is more and more complex. There's more and more legal requirements, more and more state requirements, federal reporting, state retirement reporting. It's become more and more complex, and we're getting more and more requests. We have been getting more and more requests to basically do payroll services only for communities. And so we had been doing that primarily in New Hampshire, and like I said, we've been doing it all along. All of our finance consultants have done that. About a year ago, we were approached actually by Harris Local Government, which is the parent company of Trio. Trio is your fund accounting software that you use. I think they're in something like 3/4 of the state. Main municipalities use Trio. They approached us about basically being a services wing for their payroll product, because they were finding that people were going out to commercial payroll companies to do municipal payroll, with fairly with not a lot of success. And we found the same thing in New Hampshire, where a lot of our clients who would outsource their payroll to folks like Paychex, ADP, they do a fine job, but some of the uniqueness of municipal payroll doesn't really work well for the systems they use. I'll try to keep this brief, but I sort of see it in two areas. One is the software that they use is typically not designed for municipal payroll, and sort of your DPW guy who might be a call firefighter who may also work in the rec department on the weekend, and all of these wages get distributed, and what's subject to main retirement and what's not, and sort of the uniqueness of how municipalities work. And the payroll software a lot of times has difficulty with that. And then the other piece is the staff in these sort of more commercial or private sector payroll companies just don't have the experience on the municipal side, and they don't understand how municipalities work. So that's sort of, I think what's a little bit unique about our proposition is that we have folks that have been working in municipalities. Carrie's been working in municipalities for
21 years, 3 with you, and then I also worked for the DOT for 6 before that. So it's almost 30 years.
Of municipal and public sector payroll. The software, I think one of the unique propositions is that we'll be using, and we're actually part of our agreement with Harris, is we're going to be using their software in New Hampshire as well for all of our clients. And so it's basically, we're going to be using, the proposition, we're going to be using the town software. It's made for municipal payroll. It's set up in the way it should be, and if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, that's sort of something that we can handle. But everything is sort of teed up and ready to go as far as how to handle payroll. The other nice piece that we see that is sort of separate from a fully outsourced, like an ADP or a Paychex, is because we're using software that the municipality uses for fund accounting. That tie is already there. There's no sort of double entry, data entry, imports, exports of information. It's all sort of integrated and ready to go right off the bat. So we see that as a big plus. We've heard just positive comments on that concept. So that's quickly about us. Carrie could talk for weeks about payroll, and I know
could bore you.
She's reviewed. We had a meeting previously, and she's reviewed sort of your payroll system and your.
I would like to also say the other uniqueness about what we do is we're not just processing payroll, we're also looking at your processes, meaning if I was to see anything and I thought that we could streamline something better on that, we would make recommendations on that. Some examples were in one town, we created new timesheets to simplify that process. If there are policies we think that need to be updated, we make recommendations within that. So we're not just actually entering the numbers and spitting out checks. We're looking at your processes, each payroll, to see if there's changes that can be made. And we're also having a relationship with your finance director to discuss those things.
And keeping up on the changes that are required, and sort of, that becomes our responsibility, knowing what rules are coming down the road, what main retirement, state rules, et cetera. So sort of the burden is shift on us to be aware of all that rather than the finance office. Happy to answer questions, or I could keep talking for another hour if you'd like. But
So if we transition to your system, it's 100% direct deposit, correct?
Nope. So we would use. Well, you guys are 100% direct deposit, aren't you? Or are you not?
Almost.
So
99.9.
There's always that.
So we would use your system. So we would actually be accessing your system, and we've talked technically about how we do that. But basically, if there were any paychecks that would be issued, we would process the payroll, complete the payroll, and then at the end of that process, if there are checks to print, you could print them. The manifest, you could print the manifest. We're not. We don't want to be FedExing or overnighting, 2 checks and hope they get there in time. That's sort of the nice thing about this system, about the integration, is that there is a little bit of limited work on this end to print that manifest, and a couple of other little pieces that would be, but we can't guarantee 100% direct deposit, both legally and otherwise.
Are you using a VPN to secure the information from one to the other?
So we would either, depending on how so your system is a little unique in how it's set up because you're using Trio Web, but the town hosts. The town is like the web server for the software, as opposed to Trio Web, which would be hosted by Trio or by Harris themselves. So we would use most likely either a VPN into your town to access the basically the Trio Web, or a remote secure connection that like we do. We have about 50 towns that I have a remote connection that's like a dual factor authentication. We've got a credentials on your network, essentially, as though we're a subcontractor of the town. So the security is not the data. All of the data would be held in your system on your servers. We would just be accessing that information, essentially.
Is there any warranty or anything about data breaches or access if you're portaling in?
I don't think that we would have. I mean, I guess I'd have to get back to you on that. Would be no different than any other vendor who has access to your systems, which multiple vendors do, I would assume. So yes, we would be accessing. We would have the agreement would have a privacy agreement. So in other words, we would be access to information like people's payroll, people's
Right. I mean, you're talking about employee
correct
personnel files. You're talking
correct.
about payroll files.
Right. It would be
new hire information.
Correct. Yeah. It would be PHI, private information.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So we have access to that in multiple towns now. It's not. It would be no different than I guess if we were, I'd have to look and see. I mean, it would be a legal question. Typically, our agreements have a privacy policy. If we were, I can tell you, we're insured through more insurance than one could ever imagine. Unfortunately, as a business owner, it's not that everything that we do is through very publicly used remote connections, like a LogMeIn, which is secure and encrypted, for example. So we would basically work with the town to see what your IT vendor is comfortable, or what your IT company is comfortable with as far as access to the system. But we would have access to employee information. That's correct, and we would have access to PHI. Basically, if an employee has health insurance, that's technically PHI. So we would have access to that. But it is kept very. I mean, it's nothing is kept on our systems. It's all kept in your system.
In the server here.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And one other thing, this kind of gets in the weeds a little bit, but we would not have access to your banking at all, and we would not escrow your funds. So some companies that do outsource payroll, they would actually pull the funds out of your bank, escrow everything, and then they do the direct deposit. We would prepare everything. We would get the direct deposit file and any ACH payments to vendors that you guys would have. But we would not actually go into your bank and post that. That would be something that the town would do. We wanted to make that line because we didn't want to have access, basically. We didn't want to escrow funds, which just sort of gets into a whole other area of sort of regulation. But then we didn't want to, some towns had said, oh, can't you just post the file to our bank? No, we don't want to be responsible for logging into your bank and having a fob and all that kind of stuff. So we were sort of conscious of that.
So the fee I have here is $24,250 for a year. Is that what it is?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And it's charged monthly.
Correct.
So just about $2,000 a month.
Yeah. I mean, we can do it however we'd want, but typically that's how towns like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Does the fee adjust depending on how many employees we have?
So this is something that we kind of I don't really like about a lot of outsourced payroll providers. A lot of their fees are transactional. So you get a fee for every employee you have. You get a fee for every check you issue. You get a fee for every W-2 you issue. You get a fee if you have to do a manual check because somebody's leaving and they have to be paid out on this certain day. And you sort of get docked all these fees. I'm much happier with a flat fee approach. So what we basically did is we asked a lot of questions of your finance office and kind of projected what we think would be an appropriate fee, and sort of did a flat fee, so we're not nickel and diming you. Well, we could do a manual checks, but it's going to cost you $19.95 plus an overnight fee of $14, et cetera. It's just a flat fee for basically routine, everyday payroll processing and anything that comes up. the
And then obviously
Yep.
the amount of employees you have changes seasonally.
right.
So you could have 75 employees in the wintertime, but I don't know how many seasonal employees you have for summer staff, but for some towns that could double. So if we were to charge you by employee, think of it that way as well.
Yeah. So that we took all that into consideration and sort of came up with that fee based on some transactional cost, but we don't want to be in the habit of billing. Like every time you talk to us, it's like click, 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 click. You know, we're charging you. Feels nothing against law firms, but we sort of feel like we don't want to be that way. So the additional fee, Carrie can probably say, if something comes up that's not routine because there's an additional cost, in one town, for example.
They needed us to go back and do research. Taxes hadn't been paid, for instance, for a couple of years before we had even gotten in there. So the additional fee was the cost of our research and us providing them the information and being the liaison with like the IRS. And also we did it with like Maine state taxes. So that would be what the additional charges would be.
Looking back, in other words, this kind of cropped up when we got there
Yeah.
and started providing services. And like, oh, we have this problem. Can you figure it out and deal with it? But the routine, like, you calling us about questions about payroll, normal back and forth, that would all be covered in the flat fee cost, essentially.
So, if I'm understanding this right, employees' departments would upload their timesheets into the system. You would process all hours worked, any vacation, any accrued time, anything of that, spit back a register to the town, and the town would actually pay that. That's what you're saying. So the town would be accessing the bank to pay that.
Correct.
Okay.
It's all going to be done on our system, so we'll have access to run all of our own reports
Right.
once they're finished.
So everything we're doing is live. There's no lag time. So as we're processing, as we're doing all of that, if there are any questions, we would talk to her in real time. And then once everything's done, we would let the department know, the finance department know, and then that's when they would push the button to pay the employees, and then they would provide you guys with the reports.
And I think, the manifest that you approved for the two payrolls tonight, it would be exactly the same, right? We're reviewing things, we're checking to make sure we're in compliance, you're in compliance with everything, making sure everything's correct. New employees, make sure they're set up the correct way for all of the reporting requirements and things like that. All of the expenses that hit the general ledger, the budgeting portion of your fund accounting system, that's a seamless integration because we are using your system.
So you'd be setting up new employees?
So I think we talked about that a little bit. I think we don't have our approach is typically what's going to work best for towns. And so we don't have a one-size-fits-all necessarily. I mean, the question came up when we spoke previously, like who talks to, if there's a question about payroll, does the department head call us? Does the department head call the finance office first? How do we handle this? And we talked about a couple of options. Each town handles things so differently. I mean, we talked about potentially having like a Berwick payroll email that would be MRI that could be copied. Whatever's sort of the best way to handle it, I think. I don't remember how we talked about doing new employees, to be honest with you.
We haven't made those decisions yet. That's a discussion that we would have as far as if they want to provide us with that information and we enter it. But one of the things I suggested, they would still enter it and we would be the double check. In other words, they would still provide us with the information and we would make sure that the setup is correctly. But like Christian said, every town is different as far as how much control they still want on some of those processes with like setting up new employees, setting up direct deposits, updating W-4s. So that would be a discussion that we would have before we started.
Typically, it's kind of a flow of how the finance office works and what's the most, what's the best service that you can provide for your employees. And sometimes that's not reaching out to us as the first, line of defense or as the first thing. I think that it's not like you're completely not going to be involved in it. I
No,
guess is
we're
the
gonna
point,
be,
right?
we want to be involved.
Right, and so it's not
We have some towns that they send everything direct
Right.
to us, and we do A through Z.
yeah.
Yep.
But
And
we're
then
not.
we-
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Gary. We're not the HR office. We may look at things from an HR perspective or from a policy compliance perspective, but we're not your HR department, and we wouldn't be. That's not the role. It would be payroll processing and ensuring that everything is correct in the payroll process.
Any other questions for MRI?
Is, Lisa, could you step to the mic? So we've been in discussion for a while. I've known the last 3 or 4 people have done payroll for the town here, and I don't think any one of them ever enjoyed it.
Well, it's not that we don't enjoy it, it's just, well, especially now, because there was 3 of us trained just recently, and then, Lisa retired and Cole moved away, and now it's just Cassie and I. And I'm trying different ways to try to save the town money, and if being a weekly payroll is kind of, it's inconvenient because we have to always be there. One of us always has to be there. We had an instance where it was lucky that we had 3 people trained to do payroll recently because one person was in the hospital and one person had a death in the family. And we don't have that anymore. So at this point, we can hire another person or we can outsource, and it's cost effective to outsource.
I agree. I think it sounds like it's a good idea to go through this. As I said, it's always seems to have been not necessarily a struggle, but it was never easy for the payroll to be completed consistently all the time. For the price of a couple $1,000s a month, it seems like it's well worth it to me.
So you just said something though. So if you do this, you're not going to replace Cole's position.
We're not.
That makes sense.
Are we still going with the weekly payroll?
Yeah, yes, I believe. I mean, unless you want to change it. I mean,
I believe in weekly payroll. I think when I set up my business, I did weekly payroll because
I wouldn't want to tell
worked.
the employees that you're going to change it from.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I just
You got to talk to the union.
yeah, no, I've always preferred weekly payroll to bi-weekly just because some people do live paycheck to paycheck, and 2 weeks is a long time
Yeah.
to go without a paycheck.
mhm.
But yeah. So by enabling these services, we are basically eliminating at least one position
Yes,
in the town.
yes, and we're going to save approximately. If the person had, if we hired a full-time employee who had full benefits, our cost savings is like approximately $62,000 a year to outsource.
That seems perfectly accurate to me.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to add to the presentation that was just given?
Not really. I mean, we still want to be involved. We want to. Cassidy does all the processing of the payroll now, and I check everything unless she's out, and then I do the payroll. And I think that just having that relief of knowing that someone else is there to do it is going to help us tremendously.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, James, are you looking for a motion tonight?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we enter into a 1-year contract with Municipal Resources, Inc. to take over our managed payroll services for the sum of $24,250 for this next year.
Second, though.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we see ourselves out, or?
Yeah, we're
You gotta stay
at
for the
your
rest
own
of the meeting, too.
discretion.
No, you guys have to stay.
That's what it takes. I'll stay. Happy to stay. Thank you very much.
You're on the payroll now, you gotta stay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Meet you guys.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Personal property write-off request.
This is an account that this business moved into another unit on this property at 398 School Street that they're subleasing. And the equipment is being taxed to the subletter. Therefore, this tax is a duplication. So I'm seeking approval to write off the amount of $503.31 for account 853.
So to be clear, somebody else already paid the $503,
Yeah.
and this is just a duplication of that.
Yep.
I move that we accept the town manager's recommendation and write off the $503.31 for account 353.
Second.
8:53.
853. Sorry.
I'll second that.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Wow.
Yeah. All right.
Linda with her second.
Name baseball field.
You're up.
Hello.
Hi there. I'm Shannon Rogers in the Recreation Department. It was brought to our attention that there were residents who were wondering and trying to figure out how to dedicate a memorial to a resident who put a lot into a program. Dennis Moore, he passed away on May 27th at home after a short illness. Back in '92, Denny, along with Jimmy Hale and a couple others, split from Somersworth Berwick Baseball to form Berwick Youth Baseball. So that was back in '92. They couldn't use the fields that Denny and the crew were constructing by hand, by their manual labor going down to do it, because they just had to get things moving. They did the fields, the infields. They had Tuckahoe Turf donated all of the turf field to do the field. The fire department went down and watered to keep the grass growing. Denny was a huge part of that when he started Berwick Youth Baseball. They had nothing. They had no money. They had nothing in savings. Him and a few, probably 6 or 7 people on the board, put in their own money. They enlisted the help of some local businesses such as Collins Sports Center, Devin Dukes, to do their hats, their jerseys, equipment for them. And it was basically on a pay-us-when-you-can basis. So that's how Berwick Youth Baseball got started. They weren't able to use the field in '92 because it was still under construction. It was growing. It was molding, as they would say. They utilized the Huzzy School field, and they utilized what is now known as the Berwick Middle School field to play Berwick Youth Baseball. In 1993, they started using the field at Memorial Field. So I really didn't notice it until today, but this is their 30th anniversary of Berwick Youth Baseball, which is now called Noble Youth Baseball. While Denny was the president for Berwick Youth Baseball, he also worked part-time with Lisa Hustis, who was then our director of recreation. He mowed fields, he watered fields, he maintained the buildings, he maintained the grounds, and he was very, I guess anal would be a good word you would use for it, about keeping those fields the way that people wanted them to be played on. He used his own money. He used everybody else's money. And I'm sure with everything you hear about people, there's always going to be bad things that come along when people start talking good about people as well. We just want to remember that Denny was that he spent countless hours at the field, mowing, organizing the teams and equipment, stocking the concession stand. He was a umpire for baseball, youth baseball and youth softball for years. He was also a basketball ref for years. So with that being said, people have tried to come up with a name. Somebody had said, let's name the whole field after him, and after speaking to some people higher up than me and, you know, some town employees, some town residents, why not just name one of the baseball fields? We got a baseball A, we got a baseball B, we got a minor league field, a major league field. So we would like to dedicate the minor league field, which is the field closer to the Sullivan Street parking lot. That was his baby. That's where he turned it in. There was a warning track out there by the fence. He installed the fence, the fence that is there now. So we'd like that to be some names that came up out of all of the names that came up. The Denny Moore Diamond minor league field is what a lot of people were referring to. And we just don't know where to go from here. We thought we'd bring it to the select board, see what they had to say, and see what your thoughts were. I did speak with his daughter, Katie, and she spoke with her mom. I asked them permission before I did this to see if they were okay with the thought of naming a field after him was something. And they both agreed that it would be nice for something that he's done for the town for so many years.
I just have to say, you know, I wasn't involved in the baseball, as my son was a soccer player, but is for a couple of decades, it was, you couldn't talk about Berwick baseball without mentioning Denny Moore. Mm-hmm. You know, as Shannon said, he was always there, he was always working there. You know, he dedicated his time, you know, tremendously over the years. I don't have a problem with naming the field. You know, when it first came up, as I thought about it, and we don't have a policy for anything like that. Mm-hmm. I would be against renaming the whole recreation area, right. But I don't have a problem with naming a field after him. I think it would be fitting to do something like that. So.
The only thing, I don't have a problem at all with naming the field after him, but I would go back to your comment about this will lead to the next field, to the next field, to the next one. So before we name this field, like again, I have no problem with it, is we ought to draft some sort of policy that just states that if somebody would like to make a recommendation, what format it should be in, should it get before the board, is there a vote, and then, you know, how long is the field named for, is it in perpetuity? There just should be some format around it, because otherwise 2 years from now someone else is going to come here and go, I want to name that same field the Dendelo Farm, you know, field, and we're going to be like, well, what? So I like the idea, and I think it's great, but we probably should draft some sort of policy. That way, once we do it, it sticks and it's done right.
I can work on that.
My view is, I certainly have no objection to dedicating the field as well. And I kind of feel like, I mean, the name change in spirit is always great, but is anybody requesting that we put out like a plaque or signage or a monument or anything, or just
nope.
just want the name change?
Yeah, and we think on the building right now, when you walk up to the building, you have field A with an arrow to the left, and you have field B with an arrow to the right. Maybe changing field B sign to say what that is.
I think that's all we would do.
I think just the sign, yeah.
Where it says field A, is it field A?
No, B.
So wherever it says field B, we would just replace that.
Yeah, and over time, as maps get drawn with the playgrounds and things like that, the name will slowly get added on to where it becomes recognizable.
And I also think that if the Noble Baseball wanted to make a plaque or something like that, the town would certainly accept that as a gift for the field as well.
Yeah.
Which you could also add to your policy as well. And again, I have no objections to it being named that way. I do think that we should probably have one public hearing about it, just to hear if there's any strong objections to it, strong feelings about it.
Yep.
You know, I don't imagine that there's going to be a large public outcry against it. Probably
Yeah.
more likely to have a bunch of people come in here speaking for it.
Right.
But yes, I think that a public hearing would be appropriate just before we make a vote on it.
Right.
I have to say that my son used to play baseball, All-Stars, Berwick Youth Baseball. Denny's the only one that had ever kicked him out of a baseball game as an all-star player. So he was never my favorite person.
Well, I mean, there's trivial issues like like he didn't see that one strike,
Right.
and then there's serious issues where like
Right.
you don't even know what could come up. So just one public hearing to make sure that we're giving the public the opportunity to speak about it before we
Okay.
just make a decision.
Right.
But and that'll give James time to write up a policy for us to
Just to
peruse
approve
as
the
well.
policy.
Yep.
Okay,
That's a good idea.
So thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
guys.
And James, while you're at it, looking at policies like that, drop another one for the benches.
Oh, yeah.
Placing the benches.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, we have no quitclaim deeds, no
Good
abatements,
call.
no public for a second public comment, no executive session, other business non-agenda items. A week from today is the town election. We have school board, select board, and the entire town budget itemized for approval. If you have any interest in those particular issues, I highly recommend that you either get down to town hall or can they still early vote, or is that voting? You can still come do early voting, or come down 7 days from now, June 13th, and vote 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The town hall will be closed. So
Well, customer service.
yeah, customer service will be closed. The voting will be open. So please come down and participate in our democracy and represent the town. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Good night.